Hey everybody, this is Off Leash with Eric Prince. I'm Mark Serrano. Well, the day's arrived. It's finally here in Washington, D.C., the World War I Memorial. This has taken years to conceive, years to design, years to build. It's what I think it's going to be one of the most dramatic sculptures ever to arrive in Washington, D.C. It's long overdue, of course. This was a memorial designed by a 25-year-old architectural student, interestingly enough. And I got to tell you, this is dramatic. It's so impressive looking. I can't wait for this to be unveiled, and it's taking place in a major event in Washington, D.C. There's a lot of history behind this. It's a massive, massive sculpture in honor of those who served us in the Great War, the first Great War, over 100 years ago. Eric, I know you've been intimately involved with this project and with the unveiling event in Washington, D.C. Give us the background on this and its historic significance.
Well, Mark, I rightfully give a lot of criticism to the U.S. government, but this time I have to give credit where credit is due. The American Battlefield Monuments Commission is the landlord of all the cemeteries and the battle monuments at home in America and abroad. And I go around the world a lot, and I actually visited many of these overseas cemeteries. And in many cases, that little piece of soil in a foreign land, which holds American graves, is some of the nicest terrain in that country. Whether it's in Manila or Luxembourg or Algeria, you name it, the American Battlefield Monuments Commission does a good job. And they did a fantastic job here in getting this artist, this sculptor, Sabine Howard, to do this monument for World War I. And it's called A Soldier's Journey. And I think it's 38 slightly larger than life sculptures that show a guy from recruitment through training, through battle, loss, and the return home. It's really beautiful, and he actually patterned a lot of the statues after current global war on terror veterans, be they Marines, Rangers, etc. He did a phenomenal job. I've visited at the forge, at the where it was cast at the foundry in the UK, and now he's pieced it all back together. And on Friday, September 13, it will be dedicated. And the location, so when you visit Washington, it's just southeast of the Treasury Building, directly south of the Willard Hotel. And I'm very excited to be a part of it. I'm honored to be a part of it. Although it's sad that it's so long overdue. 106 years, imagine that.
Yeah, imagine that. Well, that's the wheels of government. But that does really impress me. The site location. It's on a 3-acre site right between Freedom Plaza and the White House. That's a very, very impressive site. It's not tucked away, over by the Potomac River. It is right in the heart of downtown DC. Heck, I mean, it's the closest monument to the White House in all of Washington. It's that really, really impresses me that it's got such a prominent physical location in our nation's capital.
Yeah, and it's oddly enough, it's the other monument that's close to it is Pulaski, who is a Polish cavalry officer in the American Revolution, a contractor, a mercenary, if you will, that came here and helped build the Continental Army as an advisor, and he was killed in the cavalry charge outside of Charleston. So, look, the World War I veterans were long overdue. Sadly, there are none alive to participate. So we put an all-hands call out to veterans that are available to show up. And I hope they do.
Yeah, so like you said, just taking a look at some of the details. So these are 60-foot, it's a 60-foot wall of sculptures. There are 38 sculptures, 60 feet in total. And it tells the story, like you were saying, from the start of the war all the way to the end. So it's a chronological storytelling that goes from the beginning. And I've seen, when you sort of briefed us on this months ago, I've seen a lot of the video footage from, where the sculpture had been made. And I found it so impressive. They've got real life models for each of the people depicted in this sculpture. It's fascinating to see online these models who sat for hours and hours as the sculptor was doing his craft. So each of the faces is a living human being today. And it's just such an impressive process. Tell me a little bit about the sculptor, Sabin Howard. It took him 4.5 years to sculpt this dramatic piece of art. Tell us a little bit about him and the process he went through over in the UK.
Well, he did the sculpting in the United States. He tried to find a unique foundry to cast it in the United States, but unfortunately there was none. So this foundry he used was very much an old school foundry, probably 150 plus years old. And they specialize in lost wax process. So Sabine would make the sculpture first out of clay over some kind of substrate, a foam block. For the final model, they would then enclose that in a plaster cast, which inside of it they would then make a model of it, and then you end up making a mold, and you fill that with the bronze. They would cast it, and he puts all the paint finish on and integrates it together. It's just an amazing, very old school piece of work. I'm glad it's not some modernist, awful interpretation of what happened. It is very much a traditional honor of the sacrifice made by tens of thousands of Americans.
Yeah, it looks from the video images I've seen, it looks real and raw, and so true to life. Here's something I want to reflect on as this honor is being bestowed on those who served and those who sacrificed. I'm old enough to remember the stories of our men and women in uniform coming back from Vietnam, and how the anti-war effort really sort of tore away at them. They were targeted by the anti-war protesters, and then of course over the decades after that, there was a correction, I think, in our society where we honor those who serve at the direction of our leaders in Washington, regardless of the specific mission or cause. That has dramatically changed in the days since Vietnam. But unfortunately, in the wake of the debacle of the withdrawal from Afghanistan, I think we've seen new cases of dishonoring our veterans. With the 13 who perished at Abbey Gate in Afghanistan, just in recent weeks, we had the 3rd-year anniversary. We had Donald Trump honoring those lost at Arlington National Cemetery. And unfortunately, our commander-in-chief and the vice president seeking to succeed him, they didn't, commemorate the occasion and so forth. So while I'm not trying to make this political, Erik, at the same time, this does remind us, these recent developments remind us of the significance of honoring those who have served. Tell me a little bit from the perspective of someone who has, a little bit about why that is so meaningful today, and how those veterans who come into Washington to be a part of the commemoration of the unveiling of this great sculpture, why is that so important to those of us who haven't served? I understand it intellectually, but tell us a little bit more about the perspective of those who have.
When you think about the Vietnam veterans who were the anti-war left went after them hard and called them baby killers and every kind of pejorative and insult. And so for them to come back and have their efforts ignored by the politicians, the Democrat Party at the end of the Vietnam War, literally cut off Vietnam from getting any more arms. So in '72, when North Vietnam invaded the South Vietnam after the Paris Peace Accords that the U.S. had made the deal on, they invade, and literally the South Vietnamese are prevented from defending themselves. They're exhausted of military supplies, and eventually they're overrun. now occupied by a communist government. And so the 58,000 dead and the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of veterans that went over there and gave some of the prime of their life in service of their country to have it spit on by much of the American population really hurts. And the fact that, I'm glad the Vietnam Memorial got built. I wish it was a more positive, uplifting one. This World War I memorial is a more positive, aesthetically beautiful, traditional sculpture. Now, and it's never great to try to say anything about war is beautiful or artistic, but at least in capturing the faces and the ardor and the devotion of saying goodbye to their families, the strength of comradeship, and then seeing loss and return home. I think Sabine Howard does a fantastic job of capturing that, and I'm glad he's done it. And I encourage all Americans to go pay their respects and visit that memorial. It's definitely will be one of the highlights in Washington.
All right, now I will get just a little bit political because I am reflecting back on the 2006 midterm elections when basically the theme for the Democrats was their opposition to the war in Iraq. Here we are, 18 years later, and it seems as if the Democrats are leading the pro-war coalition. You talk often, Eric, about leaders in Washington who don't have skin in the game, and hell, world leaders as well. Many of them don't have skin in the game. They don't have children serving in uniform. Some of them don't have children, and the significance of our leaders, our national leaders, understanding that sacrifice and understanding the life and death decisions they make when they send our boys and girls overseas. It's what was striking to me in the debate the other night when they were talking about Ukraine is this pro-war coalition in Washington, Republicans and Democrats, seems to be, because of Ukraine, seems to be strengthening and on the rise. And I think we need a dramatic change, a president who's going to value the sacrifice of those who serve and fight like hell to prevent them from being put in harm's way. As we wrap up this great briefing on the World War I Memorial, just give me your final thoughts about the need for our leaders to have greater value and appreciation for that sacrifice to avoid putting our men and women in uniform in harm's way.
Well, I think that one of the most disgusting parts of that debate was when Kamala Harris said there were no U.S. troops in a war zone. And I shudder to think of the ones that woke up on fire bases in Syria or in Iraq, where they routinely receive incoming drone, rocket, or missile fire from the Houthis or from the Hashd-Shabi, both Iranian proxies, or the families of the three kids that were killed in Jordan, 3 American servicemen, or the SEALs that are deployed in Somalia now, not a war zone. I beg to differ. And so, there's 2 kinds of courage that is required to win a war. Individual soldiers' courage, we still have a lot of that in America. 2, you need the leadership has to have the moral courage to commit their people to an uncertain outcome. But my God, for the Vice President of the United States to get up and say there are no troops in harm's way is disgusting. It is an absolutely disqualifying statement, and it truly shows the delta, the gap, the unrepairable gap between Washington elites and the people that actually get the business done of defense and fighting that bear the consequences of the idiotic decisions made by people in Washington that are detached from reality. It's disgusting.
Yeah, and the hocus pocus that goes on where they actually try to claim that there was, that there have been none lost under their command, which clearly is a slap in the face to those Gold Star families from the Afghanistan withdrawal.
Afghanistan withdrawal, Jordan, 2 SEALs killed, drowning off of the coast of Yemen, interdicting more Iranian ships hauling illegal weapons, missiles, ballistic missiles into Yemen, probably paid for with money that the Biden administration gave back to the Iranian regime. Unacceptable.
Yeah. Well, look, policy matters a whole hell of a lot, and these policies from empowering Iran with lifting the the sanctions against them to Maduro being able to sell oil. These policies have dramatic impact on our national security and our national interests that go down to the street level in the United States and affect regular citizens on a regular basis. But we want those policies to be from someone who wants to avoid that next conflict so that we are not needlessly putting our men and women on the line where they shouldn't be. Last word to you on this, Eric.
Let me say one more thing. You wonder why there's a recruiting problem in the military? When the deputy commander in chief, the vice president of the United States, doesn't even realize that there's people in a hot zone. I mean, imagine you just had the U.S. Navy engaged in more prolonged naval combat than at any time since World War II, shooting down almost daily missile and drone attacks while they're cruising around in the Gulf of Aden getting shot at by the Houthis. Would not be a laughing matter if just one of those hundreds and hundreds of shots that the Houthis took got through and smashed a U.S. naval vessel. There would have definitely been dead sailors. But according to Kamala Harris, they're not in the hot zone.
Yeah, well, with this administration's focus on DEI and transgender policies has absolutely weakened the spirit, morale, and fighting capability of our armed forces. I shudder to think of what that could look like for 4 more years.
Elections have to have consequences.
Amen. Look, folks, obviously the World War I memorial is going to be dramatic and tremendous and something for everyone to go see. The organizers of the unveiling went to the right guy to recruit veterans to show up, Erik Prince. And what a great overview of this honor that's way overdue for those who served and sacrificed in World War I. That's it for us here on Off Leash with Erik Prince. I'm Mark Serrano. Until next time, thanks.